it's great to have a lot of rules and a lot of policy, but if those aren't being enforced, utilized, or used correctly, it doesn't do any good, right? So, if you've got 40 security guards and you're not necessarily employing them in the best way possible or under the requirements that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has set, then that can lead to some issue, right?
Hey everyone, Mike Witt here, and alongside me I've got Mr. Pete Peterson for our episode 9 of Complacency Kills, and today we're going to be talking about defending the target set. So, wanted to kind of kick off this show to bring in Pete. He's new to the crew, so kind of want to kick off, Pete. Tell us a bit about your background, where you've been, how you got here, and kind of what you do that applies to what we're talking to about today.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's great to be here. I'm glad I joined the Kontek team. It's been awesome so far. But I started out similar to you, United States Marine. And then from there, I got some awesome opportunities coming out of the infantry to get into the Marine Raider regiments, which were the Special Operations Battalions when we first started, and became a Marine Raider. And I spent the last 14 years before my retirement, August of 2020, doing that mission set. So, got to do a lot of interesting things, a lot of fun things, a lot of adventurous things. But one of the highlights and what brought me kind of to Kontek was the last 5 years I spent at Special Operations Command working for a very mission-specific team that dealt a lot with nuclear security, threat target mitigation, validation, target analysis, and things of that nature. And so I got a lot of exposure to the nuclear security industry, physical security in general, learned a lot, and then taking that alongside of my breaching skills, which while I was at MARSOC and as a Marine Raider, I was able to become a master breacher, through my experience there and training and certification. And so I've brought that here. Obviously you guys do a lot of blast and ballistic stuff, and it seemed like a good fit. And I saw you guys out in the industry, a lot of the product range that you guys have. I was working, from the adversary side of it, trying to attack it, get into it, or otherwise, defeat it. And you guys on the opposite side of that, were trying to mitigate that. So it seemed like a good fit, and here we are.
Yeah.
So
no doubt.
Yeah.
So you kind of hit on a point that kind of leads us or segues into the conversation. So can you tell me a bit more about your time on the jet team and what their mission set and purpose is?
Yeah. So many years ago, as like in a lot of militaries, there was a threat, that had been assessed by the intelligence community. And like all things, we try to mitigate those threats. And to be able to do that, we develop, a variety of different solutions through either, everything from physical security, body armor, weapon systems, whatever it is. So it was identified that we needed to kind of ensure that if we had any vulnerabilities or critical vulnerabilities, there was a capability inside of the military to essentially, test some of that stuff and validate it. So it was our job, to kind of ensure working alongside of a variety of other agencies to support, threat mitigation through target analysis. So we just assist different folks, different agencies, and different organizations that are directed, by the Department of Defense and the United States Special Operations Command in support of those endeavors.
Right.
And so, without discussing anything, that we can't talk about,
Right.
the reality is everybody knows there's a threat out there. The intelligence community assesses those threats, and then there's certain organizations within the military, the intelligence community, and defense that are responsible for figuring out, what to do about it.
Yeah.
And so we were one of the solutions, the Joint Ember Immune Team, to kind of figure some of those things out. And we just assist and advise, in that capacity.
Okay. And how many years did you do that for?
I was on team for about 5 years.
Okay.
So
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been around the block when it comes to testing these sites and testing equipment that goes into them to make sure they do what they say they're going to do. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of this stuff happens. You guys do a lot of your own testing. A lot of the companies that put physical security features in. It's nice to have validation through other means and maybe utilizing tactics, techniques, and procedures that are more reflective of the actual adversary threat. We understand that this particular enclosure is blast resistant, right? But if we attack it a certain way, under certain circumstances, does it create a vulnerability,
Right.
And then we use that information to ensure that if there is any gaps in security, we're able to cover down on them with some type of mitigation, or process policy. We either defeat it with, better physical infrastructure, and security, by putting a person there or creating shielding or fencing or denying the ability for someone to have access to it, or simply put, we just change a tactic, technique, or procedure which allows that ability to now be negated. So
For sure.
I think we've done a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, talking about power reactor sites, and we say that, nuclear power reactor sites that are there for the main and sole purpose of generating electricity for the grid, right? What are the main threats that they are facing, right? And what's that community's priority on keeping the plant safe, and how do they do that?
So I think with nuclear security, there's always a threat. Nuclear has always been under a significant amount of stress, security-wise and production of energy-wise, because, if something goes wrong operationally, you have the radiological release, right? And I think, a lot of the issue, public opinion, whether it's, a small amount or significant like Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island, where they've had significant radiological issue and release, that's the fear. So to protect the physical security aspects of that, not talking about the operational stuff,
right?
There's a whole nother side, essentially. So you've got the operations. Hey, we want to make sure the reactor operates safely. They've been able to take care of that, and over the years, I think they've done a really good job of improving that piece of it. With that comes obviously the potential threat for nefarious, actors that want to impact the United States negatively, to come in and potentially do harm or damage, or just as a political statement, how would it look if fencing was breached at a nuclear facility? The American public would not appreciate that, right? There'd be a significant amount of issue with that happening. So I think that to answer your question, the nuclear industry is very aware of not only how it looks and how polarizing it could be, and nuclear's had significant hurdles it's had to overcome, in comparison to fossil fuels and some of the solar and wind, and so that's a whole nother, political spectrum and another podcast. But, the reality being is they understand how important it is to maintain that security. And post 9/11, with the threat level having been raised, by our adversaries, unfortunately, there's been a lot of physical security infrastructure, both funding, training, and capability employed across the fleet of nuclear energy providers in the United States. And so just looking at it from when this program started to where it's at now, it is significantly harder a target, as a target for someone to, either criminally or adversarially, someone who actually wants to go in and do something,
right.
Very nefarious, or what the intelligence community would deem, a significant threat. It's very hard for people to do any of those types of things. The United States has a lot of nets, a lot of security nets. We've got the FBI, we've got the CIA, we've got all these organizations that work very hard to make sure if there is somebody out there or a group out there that has, an ideology that may align with doing harm to our grid, nuclear energy specifically, there's significant amount of energy and effort put into making sure that information gets passed, and we're protecting against those threats.
Right.
So in the 5 years I was on the team, I saw significant infrastructure upgrades, similar to Kontek stuff. They've put in a lot more BREs, these elevated blast and ballistic rated systems that are able to project combat power, against whether it's a criminal threat or, an adversarial threat. It makes a big difference.
Right.
You don't want these places, a lot of corporations, they don't want to look like a prison, but the reality is you've got to protect, critical assets. Not only is it providing energy for a large local population, but, you don't want a radiological release, and you don't want any type of nuclear material, coming off site and bad people doing bad things with it.
For sure.
I think they've done a great job of defending against that. Historically speaking, we have not had, any security breach in the history of the nuclear industry that's resulted in a negative effect like that.
Right.
So outside of, some small instances with employees being upset and doing some things, nothing significant of a reportable nature. So it's just a testament to the program, to the community, to the physical security and nuclear, that they're making the effort, and it's obviously showing.
So for those that don't know, can you give some guidance on what the NRC is and what they do, and kind of how they play a part in all of this, and kind of putting everything in a nice package and putting a bow on it, saying, hey, we feel that we've implemented the correct processes and procedures for security?
Yeah, absolutely. These are all great questions. The reality is, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is a regulatory body. And so as a regulatory body, they are there to make sure that whoever is operating under the licenses that they give, under the regulatory rules and compliance, is in essentially compliance with that stuff. So they have, an organization inside of the NRC that's specific to physical security, and their job is to essentially, ensure that that new information is passed on, new policy is being adhered to, that programs that support physical security infrastructure are in place, and that they're being met. It's great to have a lot of rules and a lot of policy, but if those aren't being enforced, utilized, or used correctly, it doesn't do any good, right? So, if you've got 40 security guards and you're not necessarily employing them in the best way possible or under the requirements that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has set, then that can lead to some issue, right? Because the NRC gets a lot of their guidance and develops a lot of their guidance as a regulatory body from the intelligent folks that they have working there. A lot of guys and gals put a lot of effort and energy into assessing, what the real threats are, both from the intelligence community and as a regulatory and compliance body, to make sure that nuclear sites in general are safe, and that the physical security features that are being used and the physical security guards' tactic, techniques, and procedures are up to date and relative to the adversary or criminal threat that we're faced with today. I want to caveat here and take a second. Nuclear security guards, it's not all about guns and ballistic enclosures and blast resistance.
Yep.
The reality is, they are also a very well-trained force that, observes and understands that, there may be protesters out there. They're not going to engage someone that's conducting criminal activity. You have to meet the same criteria for deadly force or, offensive action that you would need to meet in any situation like that with federal law enforcement and law enforcement. Guidance is obviously different, varies from state to state. There's different companies, different local laws as well as federal laws. All of those things in combination, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission make sure they're abiding by all of that, and really does a great job as far as oversight's concerned and ensuring that these companies have the resources, tools, and information they need to make good decisions related to physical security.
No doubt. So kind of going on that note is obviously, we have power reactor sites across the country that feed our grid, but there's also nuclear-based sites that are not necessarily dedicated to power generation, but they are for either research, they are for weapons, munitions, or producing nuclear components that go into various products across the country. So what threat matrix difference do you see between what a power reactor site would be concerned with versus what, let's say, Department of Energy or a national lab site would be more concerned with?
So to answer that question, really, it boils down to what type of material do they have on site, and with that material, nuclear material or special nuclear material, what can you do with that material? Right. And then you go into what level of sophistication is required by whoever would want to do that, would need to do something with it. So I think the United States government, both the DOE and in the nuclear industry, do a great job of managing material in a way that it's the least available, the least capable, and in forms that aren't usable or user-friendly to a potential criminal or adversary, that may want to do harm to the United States or make a political statement, whatever their agenda is. So the reality is, the physical security that they currently have is again assessed, by the intelligence communities, by other government agencies, and it is relative to that threat. So if there's a facility that has material that may be of more value or could do more harm, you're going to see a different security apparatus there,
right.
But still under very similar policy. The NRC has what they're responsible for, the Department of Energy has what they're responsible for, and then there's organizations inside of each of those government agencies that allows them to, conduct very specific pieces of the physical security oversight to make sure that we have the correct physical security infrastructure related to, the correct type of material. So it's like this: the higher the consequence, the more physical security infrastructure you're going to see, the more training, the more developed the defensive protective strategy is going to be. Everything is safe. Like I said, I've been around and touched, felt, looked at, and been in a variety of facilities between what the Department of Defense provides security for, as well as the Department of Energy and their security staff, along with the nuclear security industry. It's a very professional force, all three of them. They do a very good job protecting the assets and what is strategic to U.S. interests. And, if fellas like me are looking at it and saying that's a hard target, and guys, my peer group are looking at it saying it's a hard target, it's pretty significant significant.
Yeah.
We come with a lot of experience, and that's a good thing. We want, when we observe a potential target, from a criminal or adversary perspective, we want it to be a hard target. That's a win for the United States. At the end of the day, that's the team I'm on. That's the team
Right.
you're on.
Right.
We're here to boost physical security infrastructure, for sites, both nuclear, DOE, and DOD. And I think Kontek supports that very well. And I think the industry itself, physical security industry, does a good job of providing a lot of tools that both are physically robust and allow for a lot of protection. Because this is my saying since I got to Kontek, and I've said it before I got here, but security forces trained and protected are security forces enabled. And so I think the DOE and the NRC, along with the Department of Defense, do a great job of doing that. There's always stuff you can do better, man. There's lots of things that we would like to invest more money in,
Sure.
to make things either more training available or more resource available. But, rest assured that, the United States assets, both in the power grid, in the DOD and weapon systems, are very well protected by very well-trained individuals using very high-end security. And so the high consequence that facility may have is mitigated in the fact that it's protected so well.
Right. No, that was a spot on answer. Man, we need to get you in politics.
Yeah. I got enough problems just being me. Being politics, you got to be somebody else. So
yeah, man. Now, so to kind of wrap up this conversation, where I would like to finish off with is what do you see in the future as the main threat that is going to evolve over the next 5, 10, 15 years for power reactor, DOE, all of those sites?
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going to go with this, but I'd be curious to hear what your opinion is on what you think the next threat set is going to be.
So, unfortunately, the world is full of bad people, and we've got some great agencies in U.S. Gov and countries that we work for. The Aussies, the Brits, the Canadians, and we all kind of have a collaborative effort, most westernized countries, to make sure that bad guys don't get their hands on the type of material that they can do bad things with. And I say that because I think the reality is there's always going to be someone or some organization out there that wants to do harm, to the United States, to our way of life, and to what we have here. So I think the biggest threat, really, unfortunately, is we've seen this terrorist threat escalate over the last several years, but the desire to maybe go further than unfortunately flying airplanes or aircraft into buildings. What's a logical next step? Is it a real threat? I've been out of the military now for a year. I can't speak to what the real-time intelligence threat is at the moment. I can speak from personal experience and the way that the world is currently. Terrorist organizations, for them to be able to have the ability to, detonate some type of improvised device in a nuclear capacity or some type of radiological device that could disperse material, there will always be a desire for them to get their hands on that type of material. So I don't think the threat is necessarily going to increase. I think the same type of people with the same type of resources are always going to be trying to get their hands on bad things and bad material. I think the ability for information to be proliferated online is significant. And the fact that they may be able to get information that they wouldn't have normally had 20 years ago or 30 years ago to be able to potentially process, learn about a site. I mean, Google Earth, all these different tools that are available just on your phone, makes, the average citizen or regular person that may want to do bad things or malign themselves or align themselves with, a negative organization and do bad things. It's unfortunately easier.
Yeah.
And so I think the ability for information is one of the biggest threats. How that information is used and specifically what targets they pick to use it against remains to be seen. I think having a program, the programs that we have that boosts physical security, maintains it, sustains it, and kind of regulates it and makes sure it's in compliance are things that we need to keep doing so that we don't have a breach.
Right.
Like I said, the last however many years, we've been using nuclear power, post World War II. We got some reactors online. We had a huge push in the 70s and 80s for construction. With the current climate, political atmosphere, nuclear may start moving forward again here in the future, hopefully. And if it does, great. And they're going to require security for that. So, I didn't mention it, but I think it's on everybody's mind. I've seen it, the DOE, the NRC, and a lot of government agencies, policy and legislation coming up to UAS. So I didn't really speak to it when I talked about proliferated information. I mentioned Google Earth and the imagery that's available.
Yeah.
UAS is a huge part of that. They've got platforms now that have the ability to deliver payload, and nefarious and malicious actors out in the world wanting to use that in conjunction. So I would say it's a twofold threat. I would say UAS is definitely on the horizon for everybody. It's emergent. We've seen it, unfortunately, operationalized. It's been used against facilities by proxy and surrogate forces against other interests for first world countries. We've seen it in Syria. We've had it used against U.S. forces in limited capacity. The reality is it's out there. It doesn't take a whole lot of ability or capability to do it. It's low cost, it's efficient, and it can be done, and we've seen it done. So I think proliferation of information and the enemy or adversary or criminal threat or criminal actors out there that are doing bad things or want to do bad things, them having access to that information over the internet and then being able to figure out how to use it and or in some way to bring something onto site or take something off of site or just attack a site, whether it's nuclear, Category 1 facility, special nuclear material, processing, weapons, Department of Energy, whatever the agency or organization is, the threat remains similar. And so I wanted to make sure that we address the UAS threat as one of the big ones too. Like I said, I didn't mention it before, but I definitely think it's something that's critical and important to talk about.
And that's one of the things that we're working here at Kontek, right? For dealing with that exact threat, right, and being able to protect critical assets throughout the security organization, because covering multi-acre sites with drone detection is a difficult task to do.
Absolutely.
Right? No, not detection, but also deterrence and mitigation, right?
Absolutely.
So working with the industry to figure out the best solution to do that makes sense for the security force. That makes sense for everyone up through procurement and everyone in between, right?
Fiscally responsible as well. You got to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars when you talk about these government organizations. I think Kontek does a good job of getting the price points in a manageable place where they're getting the protection and physical security infrastructure upgrades that they require, as well as the training, tactics, techniques, procedures that all lead to a defensive protective strategy that's valid and capable of response to threat. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. I don't know if I hit the nail on the head with that one, but I tried to get as close as I could. Like I said, I think information is one of the biggest threats. How it's used, like I said, remains to be seen.
Oh, without a doubt. So, no, that sounds great. Again, just another quick episode here on episode 9 of Complacency Kills. But anyways, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, please reach out to us on our website, or you can hit us up via email at info@kontekindustries.com. And every month we'll be sitting down and hopefully getting a subject matter expert brought in to discuss a new topic that hopefully helps you guys out in your day-to-day jobs. So I'm out.
Appreciate the time.